Okay, I think I'll kick off. Now we've got a few more coming in, but conscious we're 4 minutes in. So, hi everybody, my name is Lauren Roberts, and I'm advocacy lead here at the City and Guilds Foundation, which is all about removing barriers for individuals and allowing them to find secure and sustained employment. Today's session was sparked by our second Neurodiversity Index, which we launched earlier this year and continue to highlight that neurodiversity can often be a barrier for individuals in finding and then staying in sustained employment. We understand that we all have lived experience in the room, some that may feature neurodiversity and some that may not. And we know that individuals often wear many hats. So whether you're here as a parent, carer, an interested employee, you're a mixture of a few of those. Thank you very much for joining us. This will be the first part of a 3-part series, all touching on supporting neurodiversity. Today is looking at supporting neurodiverse children. Second one, looking at supporting employees and employers. And then lastly, looking at supporting yourself in this whole process. So before I introduce our great facilitator, Gillian, today, I just wanted to run through today's agenda and let you know what's going to be happening today. Thank you very much, Mike. So we'll kick off with just a brief introduction into the findings of our recent Neurodiversity Index, and then hear a little bit about the great work that alternative coaching do. We've got 3 activities throughout the session. The first one, reflecting and exploring on a case study, then looking at the strengths mindset, and then looking at the behaviour iceberg activity. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the session, so please do submit questions throughout and make use of the active chat. We've got members of the team on hand to signpost you and keep the conversation going. You'll see that we've also got 2 breakout rooms. These are completely optional to take part in, so if you'd rather hang back, camera off, and just absorb the information, that's completely fine. Equally, we'd absolutely love to hear your views and experiences. You may have noticed that the session is being recorded. We're recording the main sessions, but anything shared in the breakout rooms won't be recorded. So feel free to be as open and honest in those as you want to be. So moving on to the reason behind today's session and the findings of our second neurodiversity report. So the first one that we launched was all about looking at the obstacles and barriers that neurodivergent individuals face entering the workplace and then sustaining employment. But for our second report, we highlighted a really important issue, looking at the experiences of parents and carers of neurodivergent children. On the screen, you'll see kind of some of the standout stats for us. Almost 40% of respondents told us they had a neurodivergent child, with a further 23% thinking that they may have. 36% of these said that their children impact their work, yet only 28% of employers have made any accommodation to support them, and only 33% have plans to. So I think it's clear from those stats, and obviously a lot of experiences are in the room, why sessions like this are so important. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Gillian Slater from Alternative Coaching, who is going to be taking us through today's packed session. So welcome, Gillian, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So thanks for joining, everyone. So as Lauren said, I'm Gillian. I am a co-founder of an organisation called Alternative Coaching, and we specialise in coaching neurodivergent people and their families and caregivers. So just a little bit about me to get started. So I'm a mum of 3. And what my background is actually in communications, corporate communications for organisations. And the reason that I got into this coaching is a personal reason to me. It's about my family. So it was my oldest son. It was when he was getting his autism diagnosis that I was looking for ways that I could support him. You know, what could I do to kind of support him? And it just happened to be that I came across a coaching qualification that was specialising in bringing together a group of parents and carers like me who had children, neurodivergent children, and teaching us coaching skills with that kind of understanding of neurodivergence and particularly autism. And that was around almost 8 years ago now, and it's kind of grown from there. It's built up from being, you know, this kind of little side hustle that I was doing in my spare time to, you know, to the organisation that we have today. We're registered as a community interest company, and it's really important to us that we are about helping the entire community and supporting people. in that way. Like lots and lots of other people, you know, that first diagnosis within the family led to more diagnoses, and that kind of building understanding that often happens nowadays, that you know, things that are missed, things that don't get recognized, and you know, kind of that new understanding that we are, you know, quite a neurodiverse family as a whole. So that's my sort of story of why I'm here and how I got here. So today, as Lauren said, what we're going to be doing is kind of really looking at your experience if you are a parent, or if you know people or work with people who are parents, and really focusing in on what you can do to kind of support your children. So I'm just going to share, I just have a couple of slides. If I just share my screen. So this is just about our organisation, just to remind me of the things to kind of talk to you about. As I said, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We started off really focusing on coaching autistic adults. That's still the kind of bread and butter of our organisation and what we do. In 2019, I left my job and focused on this full time, and that's when we really set up as the organisation we are today. During the pandemic, we could see there was a real need to support parents and carers. And as parents and carers ourselves, that's where we started to, you know, broaden out and actually coach parents as well. Throughout that pandemic and that, you know, difficult time when people were kind of at home, and it was a, you know, difficult time for everyone, we developed 2 coaching courses. So they're group coaching courses for oh, okay. Group coaching, I thought it was someone asking a question. The group coaching courses for parents and carers that are run over several weeks, that bring together a group of people who have that kind of shared experience to kind of learn and grow and develop together as a team. So it's about having that kind of group dynamic. And we also do bespoke coaching, training, webinars like today, all that, you know, sort of thing. So we've kind of grown and developed from there. So just to talk a little bit about, you know, why it's grown in the way that it has, and why I'm so passionate about it and why I love it. And it is bringing together those 2 things, that understanding of neurodiversity, about those different brain wiring, if you like, you know, the different kind of challenges and strengths that people have, and the kind of building up of understanding and knowledge around those differences that we see within, you know, the general population, and those things that that are being more and more recognized in society. So it's kind of having that understanding of people and their differences alongside a kind of coaching approach. And coaching is all about being non-judgmental, giving that time and that space to people to kind of really reflect on and think about what's happening for them as an individual, what works for them, what do they need. You know, it's about slowing down, it's about understanding your own individual circumstances and, you know, what's unique to you. And those 2 things sit really, really well together. Because as well as all of us being individuals, neurodiversity and neurodivergent conditions vary enormously. I mean, we talk about the autism spectrum, but also for all those neurodiverse people, it's like really understanding that everyone is very different. And if you know, taking an autistic person as an example, you know, autism and how it presents in a person can vary enormously. And so what works for one person, what's right for one person, might be, you know, completely wrong for somebody else. So having that kind of coaching approach to things, that really working out, you know, what's going on here, what do we need, what would really help us all to be the best people that we can be, and to support our children, can be a really, really beneficial way of doing that. So to start off, we're just going to go into our first sort of activity. This is really, it's a case study. I'll read through it. And it's really just because there's, you know, quite a big group here, it's about getting us all onto the same page and thinking about the same sorts of things. And what I'm really looking for here and hoping to kind of spark that debate around are, you know, the common themes, the common challenges, and you know, to get people really kind of thinking about those things in terms of, you know, what's going to be useful for us to kind of focus on today within this session. So this is a case study. I will read it out to you and just explain what we're going to do with it. So this is Lucy. Lucy has 2 children. Her oldest is at primary school and isn't coping well. His teacher has raised concerns about disruptive behaviour, and he started running away on the way to breakfast club in the mornings. So it's that breakfast club, you know, before school starts, where you can take them in a bit earlier, and it means that you can get to work early or on time. The school Senko has suggested referring her son to CAMS for an autism diagnosis. Her youngest child isn't very happy at nursery and cries every time she drops him off in the mornings. He's also wetting the bed every night, which is disrupting both of their sleep. At work, Lucy recently moved roles. She loves her new position and really wants to make a good impression. Her team tends to get to work early, but she often arrives late because she's struggling with the drop-off of her children at school and nursery. Lucy's husband thinks their oldest son is fine and just needs more time to mature. Her mum says everyone needs a label these days and tells Lucy she needs to be more organised and stricter with her children. So that is a fictional representation of the sorts of things that parents will come to us and talk about as an organisation. And when people come to, you know, to kind of look for support from us. So in a minute, we're just going to go into breakout rooms to kind of discuss this as a case study. And what I'm really looking for is for you to, you know, look at that and to think about, what is it, you know, what do you notice in that story? Are there things in that that really resonate with you and your own circumstances? Or if it's not about you personally, you know, with anyone that you know who has children in a similar situation, or who have that diagnosis, or who don't, but are, you know, within that kind of you know, waiting for a diagnosis or being suspected as having a neurological, you know, difference. So, you know, what is it? What are the things that stand out to you? What resonates with you? What are you noticing about that story? And then the second thing is, if you were, you know, a friend or a colleague of Lucy's, what advice would you give her? Where would you start? What are the sorts of things that you would talk to her about that might help and support her in, you know, this situation that she finds herself in? So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. If there are any questions now, if anyone wants to ask anything specifically to do with this case study, you know, put something in the chat, or, you know, I don't know if there's if someone wants to kind of raise a hand or something. But if there is anything around that case study, then please do ask. I'll just give you a couple of minutes just to kind of relook over that, and then we can go out to the breakout rooms and have that kind of discussion.
Thank you, Gillian. I think if we go till maybe 20 past, just
Perfect.
individually having a think, and then we'll go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes, everybody, until 11:30.
Lovely. that okay with everyone? It's probably around time we've moved to breakout rooms, if that's okay. Yeah. Were there any questions that anyone had? No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think we're okay then if we move to breakout rooms.
Breakout rooms. Thanks, Gillian.
Thank you. Yes.
Very
Yes.
Gillian.
All right, so thank you. I obviously there were the different rooms there and the different it'd be really good to hear from the different rooms about how the discussions kind of went and what people were talking about within those rooms. So yes. Okay, all right. So yeah, shall we move on to that? It'd be really good to hear what the kind of common themes were that coming out of the different rooms. So I don't know who wants to go first.
I think they were numbered, so if we maybe kick off with room 1, I'm not sure who was in each one.
That was me.
One.
Yeah. Hey, I think there was there's some really interesting kind of observations in terms of what was triggering the behavior. Could it have been hunger? Is it the school? There seemed to be a lot of, and even in the youngest, what was now triggering that was a change in the household with the new job, that kind of thing. So there was, a lot of kind of questions around that. And then, there's a really good point made about the wraparound care. It's kind of the two aspects about like maybe having a well-being area. Do they need quiet in the morning? That wraparound care, how's that can be built in from the school? And it's not always about nutrition. It could be those, those quick steps in terms of quiet needed or whatever it was needed in the morning, and just setting up a really good positive support network for mom. So yeah.
Love that. And as I was saying in my breakout room as well, it's not just about mum. That just happened to be a mum, but it's for anyone really who is supporting children. So yeah, who was in room 2? Was that me? Quite possibly. Shall I just go? It's obviously me. Yeah, really interesting discussion in our group. It was really lovely to hear the kind of the personal reasons why people joined today. And that's when I talked about us being a community interest company, that's why it is that sense of community and the bringing together of people. It can feel quite isolating. So it was lovely to have that, people very open and very willing to kind of share their own personal experience with that. As I said, there was that bit around, the case study was around a mum, but it's not just mums, it is all those different people within, the support network for those children. We talked a bit about that kind of, the thing that really jumped out for one of the people in the group that mentioned was that the views of other people and the kind of, everyone needs a label or they're fine, and how challenging that can be and where that comes from. And it comes up time and time again with the work that we do with parents. And it's, it comes from a really good place, but it can be really challenging when you're a parent and you have your view of what you think you need and what you need to be doing, and then other people very close to you have that slightly different approach or have different views on that, and that can be really difficult. And then around that point, and any advice that you would give for Lucy, it's like knowing that someone has those loads of different pressures. Advice can feel like even more pressure, even more adding to that kind of pressure of what they need to be doing. So those were the key themes, I think, coming out of my room. Sorry if I've missed anything. Who is room 3?
I can go. Thank you to people in my group for sharing their own personal experience, lived experience. It was really powerful. And one of the things that came out was actually getting that diagnosis can be difficult. And I'm not saying that because I know about it, but that's what came out in the group. So maybe that would be the advice, would be to go ahead with that, to go ahead with that diagnosis. But yeah, definitely the support for the mum needed addressing, because we didn't really hear her voice either. But definitely there's a lot going on, and she would, need some help if we were to give her some advice.
Lovely. And I think that's something that comes up time and time again. you know, it's that pressure that we put on ourselves to be the person who's holding all of this stuff together. You know, whether you're a mum or a dad or whoever, you know, that we often look to ourselves for the person who needs to fix things, the person who needs to kind of do all of this stuff. And that actually, when you read that case study, there are other people around who can kind of help with that. It just needs to be, you know, about, you know, sometimes just asking for support from people around you. Okay. I'm not sure how many rooms there were. Is there one more? Was that it?
I had a really great group with some
Okay.
great lived experience too, so I don't want to kind of steal anyone's thunder. If anybody from my group wants to jump off mute, feel free, guys. If not, I did take some notes, but I'll give anyone a second in case anybody wants to jump off from my group. No, that is fine. I'll cover us. Pretty similar to what was covered before. I think that bit around not wanting a label came up quite a bit in my group, around perhaps children themselves not wanting that label, and kind of that outdated phrase that was kind of towards the end of the text around how other people feel. We had some great bits of advice around kind of almost breaking up each behaviour, and that both the children actually seem at the core quite unhappy. So looking at kind of what are individual triggers for each child and leaning on other people. A great point around I guess using the evidence to help you. So the fact that it's not just, oh, you know, I think this is happening, it's actually no, a Senko, you know, trained individual has said this. Essentially, it's not just something I think is going on, and using that to kind of help you steer conversations with individuals who may, as you said, Gillian, have a slightly different view as to what's going on, or think that maybe it's just your approach that's wrong. Having that kind of sense of data behind you to say this is what's going on, and it's not just something in my head, essentially. And the whole support for mum, I think, was a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any other rooms, or is that all of the rooms now?
Yeah, I can go next. And also, before I do speak for my group, just in case anyone wanted to unmute and share from my group. If not, no, where? Oh, Carla.
I'll happily share.
Yes.
Sorry, I just got distracted with something. So I think it's probably mostly me talking. Apologies, group. But there was a sort of step back thing around kind of, it concerned me that the Senko had put a possible diagnosis onto it, and actually the first port of call would be to think about the child, what's changing, what the experience is, and professionals that they might get referred to would look at a broader spectrum of screening before pinning it down to this or that. And what I was saying was that wasn't helpful for the other family members, because then they'd focused on that rather than focusing on what the problems were and how they could take the first steps to helping. So yeah, I started ranting about that, basically.
That's a brilliant observation, though, and a very common one. You know, this is what you know, people tell us, people we find all the time, and from personal experience as well. That's very much you know, what happened for me as well, you know. So thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Anything else from that room or from other rooms?
I just had a final one, Gillian, which I thought I didn't mention, but just that link between parents often receiving diagnoses later in life based on having their children assessed also came up really strong in our group, in that thing of kind of, you know, reading criteria, whatever it might be, and realizing that a lot of these traits come from you, or, you know, come from that bringing. So that was quite an interesting one, of individuals receiving diagnoses in life. Yeah,
and it's interesting because I didn't include that in the case study because there's only so much you can put in there. There's already quite a lot there. But again and again, as I was saying in the kind of intro, it's like, and from, you know, my own family's experience, it's like, you know, once you kind of recognize, we hear it all the time, you know, people go through that process of getting their child a diagnosis or understanding their child in their and as they're going through that, it's like, ooh, and lots of things. And so on top of having, you know, everything else going on in your life, in your family life, you're also having that, you know, real shift in your own understanding of yourself, and and looking back at your own life and wondering, was this because of that, and oh my goodness. And it can be very, very overwhelming for people and very difficult, and that makes it very challenging for people to kind of cope with everything that they have going on. So thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else in the chat or anything? Any other questions at this point? Okay, I don't think there's anything. Okay, I think then what's for the rest of this session, so it's really good to get those insights from people. Those kind of, I've jotted down some of those key things. We will return to those a little bit in a little while. But just wanted to move on to the really, really key things that we do as an organization that are really beneficial when you're looking at how you can support your child. What is it that you can do? And that's whoever, whatever your children are like, whoever you are as an individual. And it's the kind of core of the coaching that we do. And to just talk about what we call, and I'll just share my screen, it's having a strength-based approach. So there's lots and lots of research around strengths and how important it is for us as individuals to kind of really redress that negative bias that we all have, and to really understand our own strengths and to channel that, and how powerful that can be in terms of improving our own mental health. So with strengths, there's lots of work around positive psychology and how important that can be. There's also a lot of research in neuroscience about kind of neuroplasticity and how our brains work, and how you can actually, the connections in your brains can be strengthened to give you a more positive, more balanced understanding of yourself by using strengths and really kind of looking at that. So the other thing I'm going to talk about as well as strengths is about emotions and understanding emotions. Really important that you have, you build up that kind of emotional granularity, being able to identify different emotions in your body, and kind of what that does in terms of being able to help you to know what you need and to be able to work out what's going on for yourself and to keep yourself regulated and safe and all of those things. So for neurodivergent people, I'm sure lots of you will have heard the term about having a spiky profile, and what a spiky profile is really talking about is neurodivergent people tend to have very good strengths, they're very good at particular things, and then some real challenges as well. So for neurotypical people, average person, if they exist, then they tend to, yes, they have strengths and they have challenges, but they don't tend to kind of diverge too much from that kind of average, or they don't have too much of a spiky profile. So the spiky profile is really a way of kind of understanding that you can have some really amazing strengths and then some real challenges, some real difficulties, and by working with strengths and kind of redressing the balance a bit, what that enables you to do is to kind of understand your needs better, and have a more positive kind of outlook around yourself and everything. So it's for you, it's for your children, it's for everyone. So just to talk through simple ways that you can kind of introduce that into family life. These are the strengths, the character strengths. You can literally Google this and look for an image, and you will get something, similar to this, or this, this thing. And it's about really thinking about how you can build up the language of and the understanding of strengths into your lives, and particularly, with your children. So it's about maybe initially kind of modeling behavior, using that language. If I use me as an example, my kids on their way to school this morning, I was talking about what we got coming up for today. What are the strengths that I need to really kind of focus in on today? And I said to the kids, I'm doing this thing this morning, and I'm a little bit nervous, so I need to bring to this event bravery. I need to be brave. And I also I'm going to harness my love of learning and the passion that I have for this topic. So those are my strengths that I'm going to bring, and also around zest and having, being able to kind of show the passion that I have within this kind of group. And then what that does is it kind of helps the children to kind of understand that we all have strengths, and that we can identify those strengths, and then that we can use those strengths to help us, and that it really kind of enables us to be our best and to thrive and all of those sorts of things. So my son this morning, he's got his GCSEs. So, talking to him, he's used to doing this now. He's used to thinking about his strengths. So he's like, I need to be really brave today too, because, he's got to get through his exams. So simple things you can do, literally print this out, stick it on your fridge, have it with you, and just think about ways that you can bring this into conversation with your children. So, starting when they're really little, if they've, fallen over and hurt themselves, you might talk about how brave they are. But, as they get a bit older and you're kind of talking to them about things, it's like when you notice some behavior in them, ask them to see if they can identify what's the strength that you're displaying there, and then point it out to them if they're struggling to find it. I could see that you were, using humor, as a way to kind of cheer people up, to bring people together. The more that you can kind of point these things out to people, the better, or your children. And as I said, what that does is it gives you that more balanced view of yourself, and of it makes it easier then to understand your challenges and to think about what you need in terms of, helping you with those challenges, so that otherwise what we're doing all the time, particularly when I talk to parents who are going through that pathway to diagnosis of of different conditions, it's all very much focused on the perceived deficits, where they're perceived to be behind their peers, where they're struggling, and so doing this can be really, really helpful in so many ways. And then a feelings wheel. So you've probably seen these before. If you go online again, you can Google it, you can find lots of different versions of it, print it off. You could go onto Amazon or eBay or whatever, you can find them and pictures of them. You can get a cushion with it on, you can find all sorts of things. But it's about really helping our children to be able to understand their feelings and their emotions, and to be able to have that language of as they grow and develop, in terms of what is it that you're feeling, and how can you express that, and what might you need, because that's what it leads to. The more you know how you're feeling, the more you can help to find the things that you need that will help you in that situation. So often, particularly for autistic kids, they have those things at school where it's kind of like happy, sad, it helps them kind of communicate how they are. It's really important that we explain to children from a young age that, that emotions are much more complicated than that, and that you can actually feel really excited and happy, and also quite scared. It's not one or the other. It's like that, really being able to kind of, as much as you can, get that granularity, get that kind of focus on exactly what it is that you're feeling. Now, this can be really, really challenging for some neurodivergent children. And so we're not expecting, someone to be able to, look at that and identify it very quickly. It can be a real challenge. I've got adult autistic clients who will say to me, I don't have feelings, I literally feel nothing. And that's, that's not that uncommon. But it is about, you may not notice that, you may not notice the physical, what's happening in your body, but the more you can build in those kind of pauses to stop and reflect, what am I feeling in my body? And so for those autistic adults, it could be, well, my heart's pounding and my palms are sweaty. It's like, what could that be? Because it could be excitement or it could be fear, but it's trying to, once you notice those things that are happening in your body, what might that be telling you? Getting curious about that. What might it mean, and what might you need that might help you within that situation? So what that does as people grow and develop, it kind of helps you to deal with those emotions before they become overwhelming, and to have that healthier balance. So those are my 2 top tips in terms of the things that you can do right now with yourself, with your children, that would really help in terms of you know, mental health generally, and being able to be more balanced and more able to cope with stresses and difficulties as they arrive. So are there any burning questions about those? I don't know if there's anything particularly in the chat that's useful to know, or if there's anything that anyone really wants to ask at this point. No? Okay. All right. What we will do then is to move on to our second activity. Okay, so this is kind of building on that first activity. What we're going to do is I'm going to explain what it is that we're doing, and then we're going to have about a 5-minute break, probably around that time, for you to either have a break, go make yourself a cup of tea, whatever you need to do, or just to be able to sit there and to kind of jot down your thoughts on this activity. So it's the iceberg activity. It's one that we use all the time with our coaching with parents, and it can be really helpful in terms of really looking at behavior and working out what's going on for an individual. So already when we were talking about that case study earlier, people were identifying, you know, what could be those triggers for the children's behavior. So you're already kind of thinking in those terms of, you know, it's not just the behavior that you see, it's all that stuff happening underneath. So you may well have seen this before. It's just a really simple way of getting people to really think about the behavior you see and what's underlying that. So you have the tip of the iceberg at the top. That's what you see in front of you. That's the child that won't go to breakfast club and has run off down the road. That's, you know, that's what you see in front of you. What you don't see, and you have to pause and really think about, is what are the contributing factors to that? What is it about this that's really difficult? What was brilliant about the group here today is that I heard already, when you're thinking about this within the groups, you're coming up with those things. It could be, are they hungry? Is school, you know, difficult? What is it about school? Is it an unmet need at school? Is it a learning challenge that they've got? Are they struggling in some way that people haven't been able to identify? So they're struggling to access those lessons because they don't really understand what's expected of them. You know, is it the change at home? Are there things happening? You know, all of those different things that can impact, you know, a child's behavior and what you actually see and what's bothering you or what's concerning you or worrying you as a parent. So what we're going to do is go into like a 5-minute break probably, and just have a look at this. And you could do it on something that's very personal to you, you know, something that's happening with you if you have children yourself. You know, what's the behavior that you're seeing with your child now? What's the biggest thing that's worrying you or concerning you? And just spend, you know, a bit of time thinking about what could be going on underneath the surface here. If you don't have a child yourself, or that doesn't, you know, work for you, you could use that Lucy case study for this and just have a think about, as I, you know, said just now, what could be going on for her child and the school and this disruptive behavior. I mean, you know, it's a bit vague, it's deliberately vague, but just to kind of get you thinking about what are those different things that could be going on, because it could be sensory things, it could be the environment, it could all be lots of different things. So hopefully that makes sense. So Lauren, yeah, if we go into like a sort of 5 minutes, you think?
Should we go for a, you know, a break, a tea, coffee, a reflection on this activity, everybody, until 12? And then if Mike kicks off our breakout rooms again at 12, we'll see how we go. I think a few of us got cut off in the last one, so we'll maybe see if we can go a little bit over 10 minutes this one, everybody. But we'll see how we go. But if we join those breakout rooms at 12, and then we'll come back together again to share any experiences and findings.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Thanks, Lauren.
Never enough time, is there? Never enough time.
Okay, yeah, so same again really. I know I was just saying in the group that I was in, you know, that you think, oh gosh, it's an hour and a half, we've got plenty of time, we can have a really good discussion, and then you get into it and it's like, oh my goodness, we've got 15 minutes left. So yeah, again, it would just be really good to kind of just touch in with each of the rooms and kind of pull out what the kind of key themes were, what people were talking about. So shall I can start off with my room, and if I just really summarize, there was a really good conversation in my room. There was lots about that kind of the feeling as a parent that you're having to, the environment that we're all in, and we know there isn't a lot of support. We know that schools are struggling. We hear these reports all the time about EHCPs and how there's too many being issued, and we need to stop doing that, and there needs to be fewer. And it's really difficult as a parent when you can see that your child needs support and you're looking for that, and you feel like you have this kind of fight on your hands. So there's that kind of fighting sort of narrative. And we talked a bit about the difference between girls and boys. Trying to think if there was anything else. Sorry, but anyway, yes, maybe if we move on to another room, and we can always come back to that. Who wants to go next? Anyone else want to feedback?
I'll go.
Thank you.
We were just talking, and I says the routine is the big one. Deviation from routine really does affect the overall. We felt that the father should be more involved. If he was doing more of the school runs, he'd understand more on what's going on and what is happening with the children. The mother doesn't actually have any support there in general for herself. She's nobody she can talk to. The comment about, labelling. I was saying when my son was diagnosed with ADHD and that, I spoke out, met different people, said it in the factory I worked and that about it. And my mother was like, oh, don't be telling that. Don't be telling that in here and all this. She was ashamed of it. But yet, by me speaking out, I've had about 2, 3, 4, maybe about 4 parents who was going through the same but didn't have anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
We said that we felt there could be underlying issues causing them to act up.
Exactly. I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's exactly the point of that exercise and of thinking about this in this way, because there is always more going on. There's always stuff beneath the surface of that iceberg that is driving behavior that's affecting people. And whether you have a diagnosis, whether you are neurodivergent, whether your children are, whatever it is, whoever we are, all behavior is driven by other things that are going on for us. So the more you can kind of step back from that and kind of take that time to pause and to think, what could be going on here? What are those things that are driving this behavior? What that does is it helps you to then think about what might help with that, because often as the overwhelming struggle, the key challenge that parents come to us to talk about, and the word that I overuse all the time is being overwhelmed. It's that there's just too much going on, and we put that pressure on ourselves and we try to do it all. And because we're trying to do all of it and everything, what happens is that we end up doing hardly anything, or spreading ourselves too thinly, or making ourselves ill, or all of those sorts of things. So the more that we can just pause, stop, really think about what is the key challenge here, what's the key difficulty, or what's the key thing I want to achieve, and then really work out what is it that I can do. And it came up in our group as well, that this narrative around kind of fighting for support, and I hear it all the time, and I get it. I've had to fight for my own children. It's not been easy at times, but that can be really overwhelming again, and it becomes very difficult and it becomes very negative. And so the more you can kind of think, yes, you need to be thinking about those steps that you can do. What can you do in terms of contacting school, getting things moving, going to your GP, whoever you can get to kind of support you, and looking for those support networks. But it's also about, as well as that, what else can you do today, knowing what you know about your children and your family, to just really be in the present and to really think about what would have the biggest impact on you as a family and as a kind of unit. And that's where, you know, going back to those understanding emotions and understanding strengths, it's like, what do you like doing as a family? What do your kids like doing? How can you kind of build that home environment that really is supportive and really helps them to kind of grow and develop, so that you're not waiting for a diagnosis or an EHCP, all of those sorts of things. You're really being kind of positively proactive, bearing in mind that I do know it can be extremely challenging, and there can be very, very challenging behaviour or very, very challenging situations that we're kind of trying to deal with. So thank you for sharing. Any one other thing, because I forgot to mention it and then it came up in the chat, but when we were talking about strengths, and I shared the VIA strengths that you can just Google and find, but someone mentioned the Do It profiler, which is the amazing Professor Amanda Kirby, who worked with you on your neurodiversity index. And she does have that amazing tool, that Do It profiler, where you can go on. It's for, you know, it can be for your child if they're between, I think it's 7 and 16, 25 quid for that one. But what that does is it really helps you identify what the strengths are for your child and also what their challenges are. And what's beautiful and amazing about that, you could do it for adults too, there's an adult version, is I've done it with my 16-year-old, and what really helps is that it's not me telling him what his strengths are, it's official, it's a thing. So, and that really, really helps. And it helps me to kind of help him to really be more positive and to really think about, oh yeah, I do have strengths, you know, I can do that. So like I say, when he's going off to do his GCSEs this morning, he can think about what are the strengths that I need to really bring with me today, and that he has that confidence in himself that he can do this. You know, it really, really helps. So yeah, that's from me. And they're very conscious of time. Oh my goodness, how did that happen? Yeah. So I did have one other slide. Shall we move on to that, or how are we going
Maybe, yeah, while you load that up, Julian, if there was any other kind of
Perfect.
bits of feedback anybody wants to give, if not, we'll just touch on a couple of kind of resources. And Gillian's really kindly put together a page of kind of resources, books, podcasts, organisations that can be visited. And then we've just got a final slide, just briefly touching on the next event. So if nobody else has anything else that you
Got a very quick one, just because I had a really interesting conversation in our breakout group, but I'll be very quick. So one of the common theme that we spoke about was the parent and child behaviour. So we look at the child, but how about the parent as well? Like, they have learned behaviours, and we might see that in our children as well. So just kind of thinking about the case study, we said, you know, Lucy could be repressing her feelings, and if she's struggling to have honest and open conversations with her mum or her husband, we might see that in the child as well, who may not be as open and could be repressing their feelings as well. So it's quite hard to it's kind of like there's no right or wrong, but it's quite hard to really dive into what could be the contributing factors if it's hard to have those conversations, even as an adult. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Anyone else want to share anything? No? Okay. Oh, okay. So it's literally just a thought, because
Sorry, Gillian, I
basically
think we had a hand go up there.
yes. Oh, did you? Sorry. Oh
Just
yeah.
at the same time
Sorry,
as the
Scott.
screen, so they kind of merged. But I think
Yeah, sorry. Go on. Scott, you have a question, or you know, want to share something?
So I used to be a Senko in a school,
Yes.
and my partner has ADHD, and I think that a good Senko is worth the weight in gold, but a bad one can be a really large barrier, arguably the biggest one, because it can stop you getting on that CAMS list. It can stop you getting that EHCP set up for your child, even when you know or strongly suspect, etc., that your child has got a neurodiverse condition. So I think it's really difficult when the parents put in that situation, and they have my every empathy. I don't have children of my own, but having worked with children quite a lot, you do see it all the time, and a lot of it comes, like you said before, Gillian, from bad training. And a member of staff, especially with ADHD, this used to be the bane of my life, is the one of the Senkos that I've replaced. was trained in how to look for things in boys, but not in girls. And frequently it was the high performing, quiet, very polite, people pleaser, perfectionist type young ladies who would have neurodiverse conditions that went completely missed because women frankly mask better than men do, and you can make societal arguments as to why. But nonetheless, it's really difficult. But I would definitely encourage anybody who's having those considerations about their own children to make that conversation with the Senko in the school, and really try to go with evidence to say, I know what you're seeing in school. Yeah, exactly, masking, precisely. Go in with the evidence that you're seeing at home, almost like a written diary, and say, I know you might not be seeing this in school, but here is what they're like outside of this context, and with your help in school, that will resolve this. Because sometimes they'll just go, no, we're not seeing it, so we're not dealing with it because resources are low. You have to, I'm afraid, fight for it, which you shouldn't have to, but it is what it is at the moment.
Thanks for sharing that. That's beautifully put, amazing. And I couldn't agree more. You know, again and again, that's, you know, such a common theme. It came up in the breakout room for us. It's that you, particularly with girls, but it can be across the board, you know, that you get that different behavior at school to what you're seeing at home. And as a parent, it's people dismissing that and saying that that's not what's happening. So you're absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You know, like, it's about building up that evidence. It's about not, if there's the problem, if the blocking point is the Senko, then, you know, who else can you speak to? What else can you do? So there will be your local Sendia service. They're called various different things, but they are there to support you. And if you have concerns about your child and their you know, their support in school, you can go and talk to them. They were very helpful for me when I was getting the diagnosis for my son, and because we did have problems with the school and with the process of getting his EHCP sorted, they will come along with you to meetings. It can be really difficult, and I know there's more and more pressure on these services, but it's, you know, there is support there. And just more generally, this is actually really difficult to kind of pull together and to kind of think about, because when I talk about this, it's not that there's a lack of information and knowledge. There are lots and lots now, more and more places that you can go to that you can find out more. Really good books, books that you can share with your kids, whatever age they are. And, you know, really helpful. I would really look for those ones where it's lived experience from neurodivergent people themselves. But, you know, lots of really amazing things out there. I just sort of pulled a few on here that I know, you know, myself. And then there are the support groups, those charities that are out there, and they have lots and lots of resources, like the National Autistic Society have their regional groups as well. So if you have one locally to you, you can find lots of support there. They also have a directory, as do the ADHD UK, where you can find coaches or, you know, some support, some other organisations that might be able to help you. You know, and things like if you can't get support from your Sendia service, there's IPSI that do the support for EHCPs and getting that, what you're legally entitled to really within school in terms of support for your children. So that's just a kind of, you know, where to start. But I think, as I say, I often think it isn't the problem with accessing information. If you wanted a strategy, you know, what could I do to help my child with this particular thing? You can find one, you can go online and you can find something. What the difficulty, the biggest challenge that I think that we have as parents is implementing those things, because we get so overwhelmed. And so the first step, I think, is to really think about what's the one thing that I want to be focusing on, and if I'm going to do that one thing, what are all the things I'm not going to do to enable me to focus on that, if that kind of makes sense to anyone here. So yes, I'm sorry, I'm conscious of time, I'll stop sharing. Any last thoughts, questions, anything?
I think you've done an amazing job, Gillian, throughout the whole thing, but especially of incorporating questions that have come through as we've gone. So thank you so much, Gillian. If there are any other burning questions, please do put your hand up, guys. In the meantime, I'm just going to pop up a final slide. First of all, just thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. We know, you know, 90 minutes is nowhere near long enough to unpack this theme, but we hope that we've started, you know, it's been useful for you. The second event, as I mentioned at the beginning, is going to be focused on supporting employers. So the two sides of that. So how can you as an individual encourage your employer to become more inclusive and accommodating, but also the other side, inviting employers to make kind of that universal design, make accommodations that mean individuals don't have to come to you, you know, with lived experience. Everybody is, you know, just has equity and has what they need to be able to thrive at work. So that's going to be the 18th of June. It will also be virtual. We'll pop a link around to everybody that signed up for this one. So please do look out for that one. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you very much to Gillian for taking us through today's session. Just as you leave, we're going to pop up just a quick survey, everybody, just to find out how you have found today's event. Please do take it as you leave. But I believe that is everything from me. Have you got any final words to leave us with, Gillian?
Just to say thank you for joining. I think the biggest thing for me is whenever you get a group of people like this who have a shared interest, there's always so much good advice out there, you know, that people are, it's such a lovely feeling to feel that you're with other people who have, you know, share that passion and share that understanding. So thank you for joining, and thank you for being participating in the way that you have. It's been really helpful. It's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you all.
Thank you.